You're listening to the Millennial's Choice Show, Canada's most trusted podcast on all things real estate, finance, and entrepreneurship. Here's your host, Matthew Ablacan.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Millennial's Choice Show. I'm Matthew Ablacan.
What's going on, guys? I'm Danny Ablacan.
You know, we got a very sensitive topic for you guys today. We're curious to know your thoughts. Guys, we're trying to get to 100,000 downloads on this. Share with your family and friends. This is a big topic of conversation, and I was at a recent Market Outlook event where they stated, based off of data and surveys that were conducted recently, that housing affordability is the number one topic on the minds of Canadians in the next federal election. This is a big, big deal. So today's topic of conversation we want to have with you is owning a home, should it be a basic human right, or is it a privilege, owning a home? I want to get into that with you guys. So like, download, share with your family and friends. Let's get right into it.
And just to get into it, you know, I think everyone can agree that basic shelter is a human right, but that's not what we're talking about here. To be more clear, it is about owning a home, and we live in Ontario, for those of you guys listening. So we want to get into the nitty gritty of, is it a right or is it a privilege? And we'll tie it back to affordability and, you know, to what Matthew was just discussing right now. So what do you think, Matthew? Do you think it's a basic right or do you think it's a privilege?
I hate homelessness. Like, I really hate when I see homeless people, not because I hate homeless people. No, I love homeless people. You know, I believe something else on the faith side. We don't need to get into it, but I hate when I see homeless people. I hate when we send billions of dollars to foreign countries when we have homeless people that we can take care of and build awesome institutions with that money to house them. Why do I say that? Because I do believe shelter should be a basic human right. Shelter should be a basic human right. I'll say it again. Now, the topic of today's conversation is owning your home. And it's a touchy subject because here's the thing. A lot of people want to own a home. They do want to have that dream of home ownership, you know, seen through. They want to follow up with that and go forward and go for it and own a home and all that stuff. But how do you do that if, you know, wages have not increased in proportion to inflation, if housing costs have increased drastically over the last 25 years, and if you're in the GTA, if you're in Vaughan, for example, the average price for like a 3,000 square foot home, relatively newer, is sitting in around like 1.6 to 2 million bucks, the average. And it's going up. We're seeing it. We're seeing bidding wars in this market with higher rates. So let's look at the landscape now. Is owning a home right now in that market particularly, is it a basic human right or is it a privilege? I think it's a privilege right now based on where we're at economically as a society. I think it's a privilege because not everybody could own it. Not everybody can afford to own it. Therefore, do they have the right to own it and buy it and do all that? Of course they do. But if they just simply cannot, then I think it becomes a privilege. And when you see a majority of the people not being able to afford it, I think that's when it becomes a privilege. I'm not talking about the outliers of, you know, a few people who simply cannot afford it. I'm talking about, we know there's an affordability crisis. We know there's a supply crisis. We know there's a lot of demand. So we know that it's just out of reach for a lot of Canadians. And so I think it's a privilege at this point in time, just based on that alone.
I would have to agree with you. Even though I don't want to agree with you, I would have to agree with you because I love the way you frame that, though. Based off of today's landscape and, you know, with affordability, you know, for housing being at all time, you know, unreachable level for a lot of people, especially first-time home buyers, I think it is a privilege, absolutely. But I kind of want to come in with a different angle here. So in a perfect world, which obviously we can't achieve here, but in a perfect world, I think it could be extremely possible to set something up where it would be a basic human right. And let me unpack that a little bit here. Imagine a place where there was certain thresholds people needed to hit or reach, you know, when it comes to whether it's, something along the lines of, you've reached certain milestones as a citizen, maybe, right? And once you've hit these milestones, you get your house. Not saying it would be free or anything like that, but you would get your house and you would live in it and you would own it in a certain way where it would encourage people in society to reach those milestones. Because let me show you the flip side. There's hardworking Canadians now that are in their mid-20s, working really hard, working over 40 hours a week each, and they're still not able to buy a home. Well, how is that fair just based off of the timing of when they're in the market looking to buy, as opposed to the same couple? If you took them and brought them back 20 years ago, they would not have any problems purchasing a home and owning a home. So for me, when I look at it, yes, there's people right now that are buying that should be able to afford a home here in Ontario, but they're not able to because of the economic situation of what's going on with supply and demand and things like that are putting it out of reach for them. I think there would be a possibility for home ownership to be a right in a perfect world. Obviously, we don't live in one, like I just said, but I definitely think like that'd be something that would be really interesting to see happen if it ever could happen. You know what I mean? Of hitting milestones.
The thing is, it's that you have to understand, like, define what home means. So when we're talking about, is owning a home a basic right or is it a privilege today? Someone could be listening to this, Danny, and disagree with you and me and say, what do you mean though? What if I'm not looking for the 3,000 square foot home? What if I just want to buy a 1-bedroom condo and I could afford that? I am able to own a home, so I'm able to do that. Like that's also changed over the years in terms of what a home looks like. And you have the federal deputy prime minister stating that affordable housing is a 330 square foot apartment that's being rented out for about $1,600 a month. That's not a home, you guys. Like, if you're listening to this and you're in your garage or in your bedroom or somewhere that you're not driving, that's basically what I want to say. Just count 30 by 30 feet, 30 by 10 feet, 33 by 10. That's 330 square feet. Like, that's nothing.
It's tiny.
That's tiny. And up until actually a while ago, did you know that banks would not even lend you money on those types of properties if you bought them, the bachelors and the studio apartments? I think I've seen one like 240 square feet that you could buy. To me, that's not a home. Like, to me, it's a room. And I'm not comfortable living in that situation. Like, how small is my life if my home is that small? Like, to me, my entire life is going to be small. Does that make sense? Like, does that make sense to you?
I get what you're saying. I could also see the other side of it where people are like, well, no, I want just to have a bachelor and I don't need maybe, let's say, a full kitchen or whatever those come with. And, I'm okay with having it to be just one room. It's cozy, right?
Those are the outliers, because realistically speaking, if these types of properties that were smaller were actually looked at positively among society as this is the norm and it's the norm because we choose that we want it to be the norm, then that's one thing. But I think that it's becoming more and more popular because that's, again, back to the question of affordability. That's all people that are coming up now can afford if they're buying something that's brand new from a developer, maybe. So I think from that perspective, it's not about necessarily what your desires are, what your wants are, in terms of, I only need 330 square feet. I get it. But if you're looking to raise a family, if you're looking to get married, and if you're looking to have kids, you're not doing that with two people on that property. And if you are, you're not doing that when you have kids. So now then some people decide, well, we don't want to have kids. It's too expensive to have kids. You have to house them, you have to feed them, clothe them, all that stuff. So then now you start to make compromises. But if we're looking at a singular thing, owning a home, is it a basic right or a privilege? I don't know how else to put it besides the reality is most Canadians will never own a home. So to me, that's not a basic right. It doesn't become a basic right, which means you're not entitled to it. And I think that's where the problem lies. I think that most millionaires have become millionaires through buying real estate. Obviously, typically it's rental real estate, but we know a lot of people that have come to the country, bought a home. They've been living in the home for 25 years. Their retirement is their home. And a lot of seniors living in their homes longer, and their retirement are in those walls. Once they sell it, that's their retirement. If I'm a millennial and I can't afford a home like that one day could maybe be part of my retirement plan, then I feel like I'm getting ripped off. I feel like I'm getting duped. Why were they able to do that? Why am I not able to do the same exact thing?
But that's what I'm saying though. Like if you take the same, like we're working hard, you know, and we're killing it. We're helping a lot of people, providing a lot of value, but at the same time, we're limited by the market just because of the time we're living in. But if you take, you know, the average Canadian, let's say that's earning, let's say $100,000, $150,000, or doing really well for themselves in general, bring them back 20 years, they'd be able to get into the market and purchase. That's the thing that's frustrating where, you know, there's people that should be able to buy a home right now, but they're not because of a lot of different factors. You know, there's a stress test here in Ontario for mortgages. For those of you guys that don't know, they're really tightening up on qualifying for a mortgage, right? And those rules just really weren't there back, you know, 15, 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, what Danny's like referring to, that's a really good point, Dan. Finally, you made a really good point. And, you know, it's about the mortgage, right? So like, look at the landscape. Like, look how you're controlled in terms of how you borrow money. So the landscape here in Ontario, that's what we're talking about, is, you know, you can only qualify for a 25 or a 30-year mortgage with the banks. You know, you have to refinance your rate every few years, depending on the length of term that you choose. You have to qualify at a higher percentage most of the time. You're qualifying at a higher rate than what you're actually getting. You got to put a certain amount of money down depending on where the price of the home is. If it's over $1 million, minimum 20% down. So buying a home for $2 million, you got to put $400,000 down. It's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And then if you earn $150,000, like Danny used as an example, the most that you are qualifying for, at the very most, like you need to have zero debts. The rates need to be lower than where they're at today. The most you're going to qualify for is about $600K.
Yeah.
The most.
6, 7, yeah.
And what are you getting for that money? You're getting in Vaughan, you're getting a one bedroom plus den, smaller 2-bedroom condo for that money. But what if that was gone? What if the mortgage qualifying wasn't the way it is now? What if it was based on something totally different that enabled you to then qualify for more money? What if you were able to qualify for more money on the same income, on $150,000? So if you earn before tax $150,000, you're salaried, you know, whether it's two people, let's look at two people both earning $75,000. They're probably bringing home 60 each after taxes, around there. So you're at about $120,000 a year. So if you divide $120,000 a year by 12 months, it means you're bringing in about $10,000 a month. $10,000 a month, if you're not going to put all of that into a mortgage because you need a car, you need food, you need other living expenses and things like that. But let's say you put $6,000 of that, 60% of that income after tax into a home, into a mortgage. That's a big mortgage. That's a big house. That's a big house. I can tell you that right now. And that could be possible because you're already earning that money. That could be possible simply by changing up the rules of the game. Think about that. Think about that. Go down that rabbit hole. Why is it unaffordable? Is it a combination of things? Is it a combination of not building enough, taxes, things like that? Of course it is. But then how are you qualifying for the loan? Who said we have to qualify for the loan that way? Well, then you look at different indicators of in the past that have resulted in crashes because the banks were a little bit more loose. And as a result, people were getting higher mortgages than they can afford. And then when things turned, the market turned, all of a sudden the market crashed. So there's things in place right now that transpired from the 90s and the late 80s in Canada's history, in Ontario's history, where they've put it in place in banking now so that a crash is less likely to occur. But you and I know, we're in the game. How many people do mortgage fraud to qualify?
There's a lot of people that do it, and there is ways around it, right? They're not good ways or illegal ways, but people are still doing it. So they are going around it. The problem is, what about the good people that don't want to do that? What about the good people that don't want to commit fraud? What about the good people that are working really hard day and night and they have the down payment, they have the income, but the rules are set up in a certain way where, for example, oh, you're a business owner? Okay, great. Well, we can't consider all that income that you earn. Here's why. And I find that very unfair for specific people like business owners, especially when you're making a certain amount of money in your business and the banks look at you differently and say, well, we can't use all the income in your business and here's why and whatnot. What do you declare in your personal name and your personal income?
Well, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
When I was a sole proprietor as a realtor, before they allowed us to incorporate, I'd go to get a loan and they'd say, yeah, but that's like your business income and your commission sales. So we don't look at it exactly the same as we would look at somebody else. I said, okay. So then I incorporated. I became a corporation. Now my business is earning an income. Yeah, well, you're not earning anything under your personal name though. And I'm like, so which one is it? Because I used to earn it under my personal name, but then you said you didn't like the nature of my job because the real estate market is cyclical. Yeah, because only the real estate market's cyclical, not any other business. No other business is shut down during economic ups and downs or open during economic ups, but only real estate. Aren't all business owners technically like commission based in a way? They're making sales.
Yeah.
It's technically commission in one form or another. So the system is broken. That system, in my opinion, is broken. How come when someone who's salaried, the bank looks at their income before paying tax? They look at gross income. But that's not really what they're taking home because they're going to pay taxes. So how come the bank doesn't consider their income after tax, which is what the bank will really have to basically lend on because that's what they're using to make their mortgage payment?
Well, that, and why do they favor people that are salaried when that person can lose their job the next day? If they make a really big mistake at work, I don't know, and they let them go. It happens all the time to people. People lose their jobs. I think there's actually more risk, if anything, or equal risk at least, with someone that's salaried compared to a business owner. If a business owner is grossing, let's say 200, 300K commissions, let's say, or sales revenue a year, that business is doing something. They're providing a service for people or a product, whatever it is. And there's the same risks of that business getting shut down as someone getting fired from a salary position.
I agree.
I really do think that there is like no reason why certain people should be, seen as not lesser, but treated differently in terms of qualifying, because it really isn't fair for those people. And to speak from experience, I'm one of those people, unfortunately.
Same here.
And it's really bad how they look at people like us, because back, when was it, like 20 years ago, in the early 2000s, if you had a business, they would just give you the loan like very easily, the mortgage. And you'd literally have to just state how much your income is on a piece of paper that the bank would give you. And you say, this is my projected income to be for my business this year, $1 million, whatever. And they'd give you the mortgage pretty much without doing any due diligence. Now we're on the other side, which, being on either extremes is not too good for the market, like Matthew was saying, but you got to also use some sort of reasonability when you're lending money. And I really do think there's definitely a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. And to jump in there, like, people used to get mortgages for like 45 years, 50 years, and that got cut down in half now. So like, imagine you had double the time to just pay off your mortgage, which resulted in lower monthly payments. And as a result, you qualify for the loan. That alone is a big change. So that alone can answer the affordability question. It's good for the banks. It gives them, a longer runway, basically. It's good for owners, same reason, because their payments are more affordable. Over time, you're going to pay more interest, of course, because you have the loan for a longer period of time. But still, if you don't care, if you're making the payment, you want to own your own home, it is what it is. Those are the terms. Those are the conditions. But they got rid all the policies they've put in place. I keep telling you guys this, those who are listening. It's not designed to help you. It's designed to control and limit who can enter the market, because the market is a way for you to create wealth. And if they're doing, limits on how much you can afford as a first-time home buyer, minimum requirements for the interest rate, for example, you got to use a certain rate to qualify. That's the minimum. They have to use minimum down payments. These are all control mechanisms. when building more homes, making qualifying a little bit easier can help solve the problem for many Canadians. Why should I get penalized because I own multiple properties? If I'm making the money, if I'm knowing what I'm doing, I'm a good operator, in certain markets in the US, you get rewarded for that.
Definitely. And
the bank salivates. They're like, when's your next deal? We want to throw money at you. Like,
yeah. And to add to that too, people might be listening to this, and I don't think they are, but there might be a few saying, well, this guy is completely just talking mumbo jumbo. They're not trying to control us, blah, blah, blah. Just look at the laws that are getting passed. And I'm talking specifically here in Ontario, not across the world. Look at the laws that are getting passed that are limiting people when it comes to buying real estate or selling real estate. And what I mean by laws, tax laws that are getting passed and put in place to make it impossible for someone to be able to make a business out of buying real estate and selling and flipping real estate, capital gains, business tax, all these different things. Now, who knows, when you sell your primary residence where you live, that's also going to get taxed too, potentially. There's a lot of things that are getting put in place that is going to be controlling us and limiting affordability for people that are looking to get into the market, because it's what they have to do, I guess, in a way to control the whole supply issue that we're having, demand issue. They're trying to stomp on demand, but I think they should be increasing the supply and removing the red tape that's been put in place, from the municipal level to the federal level.
It's all about creating wealth. Carson, you want to jump in?
Yeah, just quick. Getting away from the lending requirements here for a second. In your opinion, guys, what percentage of somebody's income, after tax income, do you think would be a fair enough amount to go towards their mortgage? Again, we said this on another episode. Percentages are not always good. Like, if someone's earning $10K a month after taxes, if you say 60% is a fair number, that's $6,000 a month, but then they have $4,000 left over for cars and groceries and. Yeah, 60 sounds like it would be too much in my opinion.
Now, let's say somebody was earning $5,000 a month. If you said 60%, then you're looking at $3,000 a month. They're going to be left with $2,000 for all those other expenses again. So like from a percentage standpoint, it may not be a one size fits all solution. I like what you said, Danny, about there needs to be reasonability. So when you deal with a private lender most of the time will say, how much property value is there compared to what you're looking to borrow? So you want to borrow $1 million, but what's the property worth? $2 million? Great. We'll do that deal with our eyes closed. Because if the person doesn't pay us back and we have to sell the property to get our money back, there's enough room and there's enough equity in the deal to do that. And those are known as like power of sales. So when that happens, it's reasonable for the lender from a risk perspective to lend the money in that scenario. Now, they're still going to ask, how much do they make every month? What's their credit like? Obviously, they need to do some due diligence, but it's very little. I really do think that on a wider level, on a macro level, you have to be careful with that approach from a value estimate, because if that's what everyone does and then the market crashes, then all those values come down. But I think from a reasonability standpoint is, who's the borrower? What's their credit like? What's their business like? What's their income like? And then rather than putting this one size fits all solution, take it on a case by case basis. I think if you approach it that way, a lot more people that get approved now wouldn't get approved, and a lot more people that don't get approved would.
Yeah. Because
it's more reasonable in that case. What do you think about what Carson's saying?
That makes sense. I agree with you in regards to what you said about Carson's question. Carson, I wouldn't put a percentage on it. It's way too difficult to do that, because everyone's situation is different, right? Like the mom with 3 or 4 kids, single mom with 3 or 4 kids, wouldn't be able to pay 60% of her income towards a mortgage, right? It's very situational. But I think that's the point, though, of what we're getting at here. It needs to be more of a situational case by case thing, because the one size fits all just doesn't work. It just doesn't make sense, right? And I understand you're going to have to put more people, you're going to have more employees or more people at work because there's going to be, different circumstances that have to be reviewed by more individuals and things like that. I get it. I get why they do that. But at the same time, you are really like limiting people that shouldn't be limited in getting into housing, something that's affordable. And again, we're not talking like, oh, I should be able to buy a $5 million house just by borrowing, $4.5 million. Well, no, that doesn't really make sense, depending on the circumstance. It needs to make sense, right? And I just feel like for people that, are making the income, you have the down payment saved, and there's just some technical reasons of why you're not getting approved, I think that doesn't make sense. I think that's unfair. I think those people, for them, it's very unfair.
You want to talk unfair? What about this example? So after we built the office, I was going to refinance the money out of it because I bought it for a good price, and I finished it. It was an unfinished shell, and I was going to refinance it, which I went to go ahead and do the application on. And the underwriter comes back. Okay. It's one of the big banks. They gave me the mortgage for the office. I just wanted to refinance another like 200 grand, take it out, and then just go play with it. Right. You know what the underwriter said? They said that exact words. They're like, this is the most impressive 30-year-old we've seen, but we're not going to give him the money because we feel that we've just given him too much money. That's what we feel today.
Oh my God.
So when the guy told me this, the guy doing the deal for me, helping me with it, I said, hey, like, picture his name is Danny. I said, Danny, I don't even know what that means. Like, why are you telling me that they said I'm the most impressive 30-year-old they've seen? They're not going to give me money. That, like, to me, I feel like you're discriminating.
That's
like,
a slap in the face.
That's a slap in my face. Why are you saying that? Just give me another bullshit reason why you're not approving me. But don't tell me that you check all the boxes. You check all the you're the most impressive we've seen, but we're still not giving you the money because on this side of it, we just feel like we gave you too much money.
I think that's bullshit.
That's bullshit. Like, if it wasn't a big bank, if it was like, I don't know, like, can't even go up against these guys because they're like, their budget is unlimited. Well, right? You can't sue them.
The same thing happened to me though when I sold the condo and bought the townhouse. We were approved. We were good for the mortgage. The last week of the closing from the builder, I get a call. So yeah, you're approved, and the underwriter's just saying, we have to pay out your car. Why? What changed? Don't give me no BS about the stress test change. She tried. I'm like, I'm a mortgage broker, right? I know the stress test didn't change. And she said, well, I told the underwriter, I asked her, and she said, well, he's getting money from the sale of his condo. So why should he keep that money? He needs to pay out his car. And I said, what if I don't want to pay out my car? They said, well, you can't get the mortgage. I said, why though?
You qualified.
I'm like, I don't understand though.
Yeah.
I qualified. I don't understand why that's changing now. She said, well, the underwriter just doesn't feel like you should get the money for your condo. You should pay out your car.
So this is somebody behind a screen, doesn't know you, will never talk to you. You don't know their name.
No.
They're just on the back end doing their thing. And they've determined, even though they qualified you for the loan as is, but they've determined that, in order for us to just advance all the money so you could get the money, we want you to pay out your car. Why? Oh, well, you're getting money from here, so just pay out your car. What if I don't want to pay out my car because I get a write-off every month for leasing it because I'm a business owner? So you see the system is broken, right? There's no two ways about it. The system is 100% broken when you're dealing with that. You want to jump in?
Yeah, no, it sounds like they were just trying to squeeze as much out of you as they could in that moment, Danny. They were saying, how can we limit our risk even more? We've got them on the hook. Now, how much can we get out of them,
that's
basically?
exactly what I said to them. I said, I know what you're doing. I said, you handcuffed me. I'm like, because I know that's what people do. And honestly, that's what scumbags do, right? So, and I said that to them. I said,
So you said that to them?
I said, I'm like, you're handcuffing, because she went a step further that really pissed me off and said, well, if you don't want the mortgage, you don't have to get it. That's when I got really pissed, and Maddie was in the car with me, and she saw like the steam coming out of my ears. And I said, well, that's not how it works. My closing's within a week. I'm going to lose the house, lose my deposit, which is like $70,000, and all the value that it's gone up by, obviously. And I said, well, that's not how it works. I'm stuck with you guys now. And I know I'm going to have to pay out the car now because that's just what that person decided. So absolutely, Carson, it's just a way to handcuff you. And I called them out on it though. I'm like, you should have at least lied to me. And I would have appreciated a lie more than for you to tell me the truth in that case, because that's just unacceptable. You should have just said, well, you know what, before we approved you, you know, we thought it was going to get approved, but now when we actually ran the numbers, you know, the car loan really hurt you. So it's over and you have to pay out the car.
It works on people that aren't as knowledgeable though.
They've
done it before. They've done it before. Yes. They thought they could do it too.
Exactly. And I told her, I said, I'm a mortgage broker. I'm like, I do this for a living. And the only reason why I stayed with so-and-so, I don't want to drop the name, is because I'm porting the mortgage over to try to save money. I'm like, if I knew this whole thing was going to happen, I would have done my own mortgage.
Yeah. So like, you know, as real estate brokers, you know, and we're mortgage brokers, we offer that service to our buyers, and we see a lot of things. And it's very common amongst the big banks and amongst brokers that are just shady brokers, where they'll say that you're approved, and the last minute something changes. And unfortunately, like Danny said, you are handcuffed. But going back to Carson's point about risk, here's the thing though, Carson. Here is the thing. Danny could have closed his deal and went and got another car loan the next day.
There you go.
It ain't about risk. It's about control. That's what you guys need to change your paradigms here. Like make a paradigm shift and understand how things are working. If it was about risk, then they would simply not allow you to ever get another car loan. There would be something in the contract saying, if you get another car loan and your numbers change, we can review this every single 6 months and call the mortgage and make you pay the mortgage. They don't do that. Here's another thing. So with the same bank that told me what they told me about being the most impressive 30-year-old, they had a problem with my what's called overdraft. So overdraft is like a protection you have on your account that if you spend more than you have in your account, the bank will basically lend you the money. Your checks won't go NSF up to a certain number. So like they approved me for like $250,000 of like overdraft.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I'm a big boy. So I took it, obviously, right? And it's there. It's on my account. I never use it, but it's there in case I need to use it. You know what they said? They go, that's money. We've lent you too much money. And if you use that money, now we're taking on more risk if we lend you here more money, because then you have access to all that money over there. It sounds like it makes sense, right? It's like, oh, that's reasonable, right? You approved me for that overdraft, meaning you did the calculation that if I use all of it, I'm still okay. You've approved me for that. You didn't just give it to me out of the goodness of your heart. So I should have the right to blow my brains out in Vegas with that money. And not that I would, but I should have the right to do that. And I still should have the right for you to give me the loan over here as long as I qualify for it. How come you're penalizing me for the previous loan that you've given me, saying we just feel like we've given you too much, but you didn't give it to me for free. I qualified for that money. And now I'm coming back to you trying to get more. And you're saying you qualified, but we've just given you too much. So there is a certain risk at the bank. Someone might be listening to this and saying, yeah, but you don't know about the risk we calculate of, they called it something. They told me what it was called. The risk of having too much loans. There's a phrase for it.
Like you're too leveraged kind of thing?
No, it's not leveraged. There's a phrase for it in the banking industry. And I get it, guys. I get it. That's how you look at it. I'm just telling you that that's the wrong way to look at it, because I explained it. You just approved me here. You asked for all my financials. You approved me there. So that means you took into account me using that loan. That's why you approved me for it. Now I'm applying for another loan. You can't penalize me for approving me here. Now I'm trying to get a loan here. You can't penalize me there. That's not fair.
But for that, they approved you for the first one, for example, without knowing you would be getting the second one, right? So,
but that's okay. But I qualified for the second one. They just said you're the.
Oh, so wait, you qualified. So
it's the same scenario of the second
one.
It's the same conversation where they're like, you're the most impressive one. You have no problem. Yeah, you could service the debt. You can service.
So
you can pay for the debt.
That's the difference. I wanted to clarify. Yeah.
You know, we just feel we've given you too much money.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exposure. It's called exposure risk. Yeah, there's a word for exposure risk. And it's like, well, what if you do utilize everything all at once? That's how they look at it.
Gotcha.
And it's like, yeah, but you approved me for it.
Yeah, no. As long as you qualify,
Like you
for
can go
it,
today
that
and
doesn't
go
make
get
sense.
you could go lease a Lamborghini if you want.
Yeah.
But you just bought out your car. How much did you pay to buy it out? 30,000?
No, it was 12,000.
They wanted you to pay 12,000. They thought that $12,000 would make a difference on giving you a $1 million mortgage for $1 million house or whatever the amount was.
Yeah.
$12,000 really? $1,000 a month really?
Literally doesn't
That's
make
all
sense.
about control. That's all about just messing with you. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no logical explanation for it. You can go and trade your car in right now and upgrade it and get a massive loan.
Definitely.
It's almost like you know too much, and now they're not giving you any more money in a way. You know the system too well.
You think so?
Well,
It kind of sounds like that a little bit.
that's what I think happens though. Like a lot of the times, like I feel like people.
You think they're listening to this?
I've met a lot of people that don't have any credit, and there's like, we don't want credit, we don't, want it, and we don't want to use it. That's fine, but it's gonna impact you other places. Like you're trying to rent a place, you have zero credit, no one's really gonna trust you, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like the banks, I've seen it in the past when I used to have like higher credit card balances, things like that. When I was just starting the business, things like that. They would always increase my limits, like
all the
time. Like when
Without
you're
you-
leveraged,
without asking.
they'll throw money at you. But now,
I literally walked into the bank the other day. They threw money at me. They threw it at me.
imagine.
like
But they
what
do
Danny
do
what
that.
Danny's saying. Hang on, this is a good point. What Danny is saying is like, have you guys ever maximized your credit card and then all of a sudden they threw another $1,000 at you?
Well, you get the email saying you've been pre-approved for
Yeah.
an increase in your credit limit.
I've always had to request. So another tip, if you're really young and you're listening to this, like do this. Just do this. Whatever credit cards you have, use them, pay them back. Use them, pay them back. Don't ever pay interest. I've never paid a penny in credit card interest, but I have paid interest in like lines of credits and stuff. So that's okay. That's money that I use and I borrow and I pay back. But with credit cards, I would just constantly use them and pay them back so that I can go request a credit limit increase. Why would I do that? Because think about it. If you are only at $1,000 on one credit card, and then now the time comes for you to get a house, get a mortgage, you want to apply for $1 million mortgage. If you only had a credit card with a limit of $1,000 and that's what you were using, they're not going to give you the mortgage. Your credit is not full enough for them to see a history of how do you pay your bills, and are you responsible with a larger amount of money. So I always used to go and request credit once a year. I'd request a credit limit increase on everything, one shot, everything. And then one day I'm looking at my clients. How'd you get pre-approved for this? 25,000. They're trying to ask me for my blood type to give me 1,000. How'd you get approved for this? And all of a sudden, the thing that they all had in common was that they would be using their credit and have high balances owing on their credit cards and on their lines of credits, and the bank would just keep extending that and giving them more and more and more. How does that make sense? They're not even qualifying for that. In fact, they're showing you that probably shouldn't give them the money because they're not going to pay you back. The other day I checked my credit card. For once, it went from 12,000 to 19,000. I'm like, oh, thank God they gave me a little something on my business, one of my business credit cards. I'm like, it's about time.
You know why though? They don't care about credit cards. That beautiful 24% interest rate they're collecting on all that money.
Of course.
24%.
They want you to use it.
24%. They want people to go into debt. That's what people don't know and understand. They want you to go into debt because the more you go into debt, the more more them, they,
Who?
the Matrix. I'm messing with you. No, the banks. And they earn more money off that, right? And they keep you in that cycle. And guess what? You just got approved for another credit card somehow, some way. And now you have they have another revenue stream. That's what I call it. And that's how they make even more money, more interest off of you. So I tell people, if you're going to get credit, you got to use it the right way, the way it's supposed to be used in the system to your advantage, not so that you go into debt because you went shopping and you just spent too much money that you weren't planning on spending or that you don't have. That's the people they get.
Well, it's the same thing with like student loans. They've approved billions and billions and billions of dollars of student loans.
Yeah.
Those same people would not be eligible to get a mortgage at that time. But I know student debt is obviously less, 40, 50, 60,000, thing around that number. But if you just take that and you apply it to like a line of credit, they wouldn't give you a line of credit.
No.
They wouldn't, that same person that if they're not working, they're just going to school and they qualify for their OSAP or their student loan, they wouldn't be qualified for a line of credit.
100%. But when you're saying like 50, 60 grand, that's true in like Ontario, but look at the States, dude. There's people that have like $400,000, $500,000 in student debt in the States because that's how much it costs for those Ivy League institutions.
The only reason I didn't bring up the States is because it's also very easy to get a mortgage there and a loan there. So it's a little bit different from here. That's the only reason I didn't bring it up.
True, but it's still to an extent of they'll throw student loans at you as opposed to, getting a mortgage. They still qualify and they have their own way of qualifying people. But when it comes to certain things like student loans, credit cards, they'll just throw them at you.
The argument can be made for sure. Yeah. So again, you got to ask yourself why, right? And now if you're just going back to the topic of is owning a home right now, is it a basic human right or is it a privilege? I mean, I think like you were mentioning, Carson, about like driving a car.
Yeah, exactly. I was mentioning just before the episode. People mention is driving a car a privilege or a right? Really, it's a privilege because you can get it taken away at any time if you're drinking and driving, if you're racing on the highway, that sort of thing. So, I mean, it's funny, but with a house, I don't really know exactly like how that would tie in, but if you have some bad neighbors or something, if people are, I don't know, not taking care of their properties, like should there be more regulations in terms of homeowners being good neighbors and taking care of their properties?
It makes sense. And the main difference to draw the difference for that is like people don't need vehicles in terms of, there's people that don't have cars, let's say in downtown, right? They walk everywhere, they take public transit, but people need homes. That's the difference. People need a roof over their head.
So the question becomes, do they need a place to live? And the answer is yes, I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
And that place to live, do they need to own it?
Yeah.
This is the dilemma we're in right now. And when you look at all levels of government, when you look at certain parts of the world, there is no dream of home ownership in the UK, in London, England. There's no dream of home ownership. They all rent. They're like, what are you talking about? In Europe, a lot of parts of Europe, most people rent. And so the question becomes is it about owning a home or can you just rent it? And I think a lot of people here still are holding on to the dream of home ownership. And I think they should. Because it's been proven to be a vehicle of wealth creation. Even though your own home is a liability, it takes money out of your pocket every month. We know that. But we've seen over time, property values appreciate tremendously. And that's why a lot of Canadians, their nest egg is their home. Their retirement plan is their home.
That's true. But what's going to happen to all those Canadians that have this mismanaged expectation of home ownership where it's a family, and they have kids and all of their money at the end of the month is either gone towards the rent, their living expenses, utilities, things like that, food, with the expensive food costs happening right now, they're left with very little or none or are going into debt, but they still want to own a home. And, they're not open to speaking with a professional about how it is you can do that. And they're just like, yeah, we're going to try to save. I'm sorry to say this. I really am. But you are not going to buy a home. I'm so sorry. Like it hurts me to say that. Like there's so much emotion in what I'm saying, but it's the truth.
This guy's tearing up, Carson.
No, I really think people need to know that. Because, bro, when you're on the boots on the ground, you're talking to these people, they're real people. They're families, they're moms and dads, and they have kids looking up to them to provide for them. But they don't know better because they haven't spoken to the right people that are going to give them the real honest advice.
And sometimes they have, and it's like, what would you do if those parents came up to you and they have 2 kids and they're renting and they're earning, together they're earning $70,000 a year, $80,000 a year. The reality is, going back to what we just talked about, they won't qualify.
Exactly. So I would tell them though, look, you're not going to qualify. I would manage that expectation for them because I think that's one way, a very freeing thing in a sense to be like, oh, so like what we're aspiring for based off of our current circumstances is not possible. Here's what we would need to do and where we would need to get to in order to make that dream a reality. I think that's empowering personally. I think sugarcoating it and, you know, I don't know, like whenever people say, like you can do it, you know, you just have to work towards and save. I'm so sorry. I think that's a fallacy. I think that's a lie.
Well,
I think
that
you're
is a
doing
lie.
people a disservice. Whichever real estate agent or mortgage broker or person at the bank says that, I think that's a lie. And I think you're not really doing them a service. You're actually just making it worse for them.
You'll never outsave inflation.
Yeah.
I know you guys are close to wrapping up here, but I think from my perspective, we're going to see more people in each home. I think maybe that's a way to get around it, is to, you know, say, you know, you're making 100,000, your brother's making 100,000, your two families are coming together and you guys are getting a house together. I think we're going to start seeing more and more of that. You know, is a situation like that better than renting? In my mind, it is.
Yeah,
I think so, dude.
co-housing is on the rise, that's for sure. And it's very popular and common amongst cultures, certain cultures as well.
Guys, like look at Brampton. Let's be honest. Like a lot of the Indians there, that's what they do. And they're very proud of it. They say, this is how we were able to set ourselves up.
I would
And-
honestly, I would do it. If Sarah was okay with
It's
it,
just
I
the
told her I'd
realities.
live with my parents. I have no problem with it. I got a detached house right now by myself and with Sarah, obviously, and my kids. But like, you know, it's expensive and I don't need to feel that burden. But it's fine. We're making it work. But like, if Sarah was cool with it, if privacy wasn't an issue, I'd live with my parents. I'd live with you and Maddie.
I was going to say, I would have no shame
issues
in doing that. Like if we were in the situation where we can't buy anything on our own and we're just stuck and we're going to rent, absolutely. I'd come to you guys and be like, guys, would you want to do something together? Obviously, where we set up in a way where there is a little bit more separation and privacy. Any way you can make that happen. But it's still better than, I think, renting. But at the same time, some people are like, no, I'm happy to rent and I'd rather have my own privacy in my own place, and as long as I get that, I'm okay to rent. And I know people in that situation, and that's totally cool too. But I definitely respect those people, like going back to what you're saying, Carson, where they chalk it up as, listen, this is temporary, it's going to help us get our feet on off the ground, and then we're going to be able to invest in our own because they're saving so much money. Then they can each buy a property on their own eventually. That is so smart, in my opinion. They buy businesses and do businesses together, and then, you know, sell that business, and they each get their own business. Makes sense. Yeah, this is a really good talk, though.
Yeah, good points, Carson.
Yeah,
Danny as
really
well.
good points.
Guys, I want to know what you guys think. If you watch this to the very end, I really want to know what you guys think. Should owning a home be a basic human right here in Ontario or in Canada if you're in other provinces? Or is it a privilege? And do you think it should remain a privilege? I want to hear from you guys. So connect with us on Instagram at Matthew Ablacan, at Danny Ablacan. Guys, get us to 100,000 downloads. Come on, we'll love you forever. And until next time, you guys, we're out.
We're out.